So here's how you can do a pretty easy spectral sound design thing using Vital. First, get yourself a couple of different wavetables and then set up LFO1 to be this shape and LFO2 to be this shape. Make sure they have the same frequency, and then set your macro 1 to modulate the frequency time at the same amount on both of these. And what that's going to do is just set it up to where when I play a note, so I have a low note here since the oscillators are pitched pretty, they're at standard tuning. When I play that, what that's doing is just playing the level on oscillator 1 only, or the level on oscillator 2 and 3, and it just gives me a lot of different tones. Then I've just hooked the random up here to like a random amp on this one, a formant on this one, so kind of just adjusting a vocode here, random amp here. Then I'm FMing from oscillator 2. So just kind of set this up to make as weird stuff as you can using randomization. You can use different randomizers. You don't have to set them all to the same random. But the idea here is not aiming for a thing, but just getting it to make a lot of different tones. And then the last thing that I've done here is set up a global pitch bend, and you can do that in the matrix by setting macro 2 in this case to the voice transpose, which is inside the global tab. And that gives me this, which is one thing where I can play a note, add a global tuning automation and a gate rate automation. So when I just have the global tune static, I get just a bunch of different frequencies and sound effects type things going on. Then if I bring the tuning down, you can get even different stuff. Right, so like some weirder stuff with a lower note, you could also just transpose it, right? Then the real best things come in, or the most like weird things come in when you start doing automations on the global tuning and the rate of the LFOs. So now let's talk post effects. So the post effects chain is the other half of this. The first thing that I like to add is a fruity limiter or an OTT to just really compress the signal together. So I'm doing really heavy compression. Then I'll do a spectral gate, and I'm going to automate the amplitude cutoff and the weak strong balance. Now with the two things that I have, this is my weak strong and this is the cutoff. You're going to kind of have to finick with the cutoff a bit to get it to where it actually engages and does spectral stuff to it. But basically, the weak strong balance, I want to stay around this range and around this range. I don't want to keep it like floating around here because you just don't get a ton out of it there. But definitely experiment with this and find what works for you. Then the amplitude cutoff, you just want to find the point in automations that like make that work there. So I'll pop this up right here and just show you what it's doing. Then before we move out of the spectral gate, just know you can also go in here and change the FTT style and the overlap count and the window type, and it does have a drastically different tone on the sound, especially if you're changing the FTT size here. And I used to think that this plugin wasn't that great, and it was mainly because I wasn't changing the FTT style. It adds a ton of PDC delay to FL Studio if you're using FL Studio, so you will get like, I have, this is a half second of, yeah, that's a whole half second of delay. So if you do this in a track on like a live, making a song, it's going to mess up your sidechain a good amount. But in a sound design session, you can really explore and like even hit these super long, this one is 35 seconds of PDC delay. So when I press the play button, it won't play for 35 seconds with that one. So I'll switch it back to like a weaker one. So this one's only half a second roughly. Then the next thing that I like to do is add a single effect that does a single thing. So it can be a reverb, it can be a chorus, it can be a delay, just anything right here. And the purpose of that is so you can hot swap it out and get a different tone that's vastly different by changing this, and then following that up with an OTT. So here I have a gross beat with the preset that I use that I made called Meat Basher, but you can also just use Juggling Science if you want to try this particular type of sound out. And I know that's super loud, so let's go ahead and talk about the mastering for this particular channel. I like to add a couple of plugins just to you know how we wanted to get it nice and loud into the spectral gate. Now I want to do the same thing but on the output, so that the final like glitchy spectral thing that I have is relatively the same loudness, so I can kind of sample it easier. So I'm just doing an OTT here, and then an expensive OTT with a preset, and then a V clipper to act as like a limiter. Then the next thing that I like to do is add a multi-effect. So I added Digitalis here, And before I move on, I'll just say the last thing that I have is an EQ after that to get rid of some of the subs, and you could even use this to like control the stereo a bit by like EQing out some of the side, but we'll just kind of keep moving here. Then what I like to do with the multi effect is put it in there, go in, get the last channel or the, you know, after your mastering chain, grab an Edison, switch this to, instead of the default 5 minutes, switch it to forever, hit record, do it now, right? So it just starts recording. Then you can go in here and press play, and I'm going to probably turn this down a little because it's going to be loud, and just kind of flick through the presets. And get yourself some interesting stuff. Now, if you don't have Digitalis because it costs, you know, a couple bucks, first of all, I recommend it because it's good, but second of all, you can use Fracture to do this. Or Hysteresis is another one that works pretty well for this, and you can just hit the random button or flick through the presets here. So now that you have all that set up, let's talk about how you can get more mileage and make a bunch of sound design out of this one particular FLP that you have set up. The first thing is going to be going here and change anything that has to do with your initial vitals. So that could be like changing these shapes here, giving new automations, picking a new higher note, going in and changing some of your wavetables here or some of the randomization and changing this and changing that and just trying doing stuff like that. Then the other thing you can do, super simple, is just drop in some loops and send them through your same effects chain, but just add a different input altogether. So here's that's a drum loop that I'm sending into it. Then you can do the same thing but with a different type of sound, so like a melodic loop. Then the next thing I would recommend is go in and just change out this gross beat. So that's like my, what I would call like my switchable effect. So you could throw anything in here. We'll go with the frequency shifter. And change it out with whatever you want. So like reverbs, anything really can work right here. Reverbs and delays can get kind of samey though, so maybe, you know, stay away from anything that adds long tails, but they can also get interesting sounds. Then another thing that you can do to really quickly and easily change this is just turn off a couple of the effects. I'd leave the spectral gate on, but just try it without some of the effects that you have in there and see what you like and see what sounds good for you, or even just changing the order of your effects. So if you move the spectral gate further, you kind of just end up with this super randomizable, customizable, easy, fun sound design thing that you can use to make drums and all sorts of other effects, one shots and stuff. Thank you for watching. I will see y'all in the next one.